it's me Michaela and welcome back to my channel. Please ignore the hair today. I really need to wash it, so we're dealing with a lot of puffy, undefined, brushed out curls at the moment. We're just gonna pretend that it looks great, thank you. So it is the beginning of October, which means it is time to go over all the books that I read in the month of September. And it was a pretty good reading month. I've been having a really good reading year in general, actually. I think I'm really at a point in my reading where I started kind of trying to read more again in like 2021, and then in 2022 I definitely was very consistently reading, and now this year 2023 my reading has like really picked up and I'm reading a lot more volume of books in general this year. And I think as a result, it's like that perfect moment, right? Like I'm excited about everything I'm reading, so like I'm loving everything I'm reading because I'm like experiencing a lot of these things in books for the first time. I'm trying to like really enjoy the fact that like I'm rating everything amazingly. Right now, I think the more books I read and the more I have to compare my current reads to past experiences, probably the more critical and the lower ratings I'm probably gonna give, because I just have a broader perspective. Anyway, that's a total tangent, but it's kind of related. But let's bring it back. Let's focus. Okay, we're focusing on September. So in the month of September, I read a total of 6 books. 5 of them I owned and I read physically, and the 6th book I read digitally by loaning it through Libby. That's kind of like my standard. If I own it, it's a physical read because I don't buy ebooks, and if it's loaned, it's usually a digital read. I did have 2 rereads this month, and then I apparently can't do math. Why do I have written in here that I read 2 rereads and 3 new books, and then I have 6 books total? That's not how math works. Okay. I did have 2 rereads this month, and I had 4 books that were new to me. I had an average rating of 4.3 stars, and in terms of pages, I read a total of 2,333 pages in September for an average book length of about 389 pages, and I was reading about 78 pages per day in September, which is much higher than I expected, honestly, because August was such an amazing reading month for me. I wasn't expecting September to be this high. So I'm pretty happy. I'm very happy. What can I say? I'm a happy gal. So let's get into the books I read. The first book I read was a reread, and that was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I did actually buy myself a physical copy of this book because the first time I read it, it was digitally, and it was still a 5-star experience. I gave it 5 stars last time, I gave it 5 stars this time. I think, like I had predicted, the multimedia aspects of this book, like having pictures and journal entries and things like that, text messages, it's definitely better portrayed through a physical copy of the book than digitally. I don't know if maybe the formatting is better if you read it like on a Kindle, but I was reading it on my iPad, and because of the screen size, it just makes the pages kind of wonky when I'm reading it there. So I was really happy I did get the physical book, and I wanted to continue on in the series because, again, this was a 5-star. I thought it was such a fun read. It's a mystery thriller young adult book. It's really fast paced, it's a really quick read, it's a really fun read, it keeps you guessing, there's suspense, and there's a bit of a twist at the end that's quite shocking and good, and I liked it. It's a really fun time. I'm really glad I started the month out with this. As much as like I also like some slower pace, more dense, more lyrical writing, and I enjoy a very broad level of books, and that's why like I'm able to really enjoy some more lyrical dense writing, because I break it up by reading some really fun, quick pace, short chapter, easy to read books. And I think that's key. I would say like this is also a really good book to try and read if you're in a reading slump, because I think it'd get you out of one, potentially, if that's a thing you're needing. So after reading Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I actually have this in my Labor Day reading vlog, so if you want to see my more detailed thoughts, you can go over there. But I did read this in my attempt to try and read more contemporary romance and become a romance girly. Like I really feel ready. I feel like I'm about to enter my romance girly era, and I was kind of hesitant about contemporary romance because every time I heard people talking about contemporary romances, I was kind of always just like, it sounds all right. Like I never had anything whereas somebody described it and I was like, oh my god, I have to read that, that sounds so good. But I figured, you know what, I'll try it out. So I have been reading, if you've been like following my channel for a little bit, I've been reading the Bromance Book Club series, and that has been fun so far. It's a sneeze. Am I going to sneeze, or am I just going to sit here and feel like I have to sneeze? And the sneeze left. Wow, that's disappointing. Anyway, so I read Icebreaker. Apparently this is actually going to be a series. I think the second book is called Wildfire. It's coming out in October, and I do think I'll read that at some point, whether it'll be right away or later on, I don't know, but we'll figure that out when we get there. So I've been trying to read more contemporary romance to really find what I like, because I found I can like it. And so I read Icebreaker, and I gave this 4 stars. I really liked it. I thought it was really fun, and I thought the dynamics between them were quite fun. It is quite spicy. There is a fair number of spice scenes in here. That was mildly unexpected. But I think it was like a nice balance of having good character depth while also not being too heavy, so it still has that rom-com feel. There's a lot of like side characters with these really like caricature like personalities and quirks that really add to like the comedy and really make them lovable. And I really like our 2 main characters, Stassi and Nate. I think they're fully fledged people. I will say that the writing at times felt a bit clunky. Like I'd be reading and then I'd be like, what? Because it didn't make sense how we got like from here to here like that quickly. Like I didn't feel like it flowed all the time. I did read the first half of this, I think, much quicker than the second half, because I felt the second half had more of that clunky feeling than the first half of the book. But still, overall, I thought this was so fun and I had a really good time, and I would recommend it. Though I will say a trigger warning for disordered eating and eating disorders. It is present here. I wouldn't say it's super heavy, but use your own discretion and look into that, because I think it's important to mention, because I don't think it's quite an expected thing to be in like a fun rom-com novel, and I don't want anybody to be shocked and surprised by that. So keep that in mind. So the third book that I read was Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson, and I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved this mystery book. This is also apparently becoming a series, and there's a second book coming out and I didn't realize it. So in September I accidentally started 2 series, and that's a whole thing. I talk about it in my series spreadsheet walkthrough video that I made. If you want to know all about how I keep track of all of my series, since I'm talking about it in like every video, you can check that out over there. But yeah, I accidentally started 2 new series. Did not mean to be doing that, but I did. But it was worth it, because this was a 5-star read. It was so good. I found that this also had this sarcastic, dry, kind of dark humor in it that I found so fun. It's written in a way where the protagonist, Ernest, is like writing the book and addressing you, the reader, and it is made in a way that you're supposed to be able to solve the mystery along with him. Kind of very old style whodunit kind of mystery book, and it was so fun. It has a lot of really good characters. It's like this complicated family, and like the title suggests, everyone has killed someone, and now while they're on vacation there's a murder, and so they're all like, okay, it must have been one of us, but who did it? Because like we all know we're capable of that. And it was just a good time. I really loved it. I'm really interested about how exactly this is going to become a series where Ernest, our main character, kind of becomes like this detective. I'm kind of curious about how that's going to happen, where the whole premise of this first book is the fact that his whole family is like very complex and could have killed the person, so it doesn't really feel like, I don't know, it's not the same setup as usual random regular person becomes detective style mysteries, because it's all within his family in this one. So I'm like, where's the mystery going to come from in future books? But I'm definitely looking forward to it, because I think this writing style is super fun, super funny, and also, you know, makes you think because you're trying to solve the murder mystery. It's a really good balance, and it was just like a good time. There you have it. So the fourth book that I read was another mystery book. This is the one that I read digitally. It was Death in a Darkening Mist by Iona Whishaw, and it's the second book in her Lane Winslow mystery series. And I gave this 3.5 stars. I did like it more than the first book. I didn't love the first book, but there's aspects of it that I enjoyed. Lane is like an ex-spy from the military. We're in like the late 1940s in rural British Columbia, and she moves there after the war. Everybody in this little town, there's some characters in this place, and there also is a lot of like history, and everybody has their secrets. That's kind of like the more interesting aspect to me in the first book, and the mystery was like okay, but I didn't love the way it was executed, so I wanted to continue on the series to see if, you know, like maybe the writing kind of settles in and the mysteries get better, and I did like this one better for sure. So I gave it a 3.5. I will say it was sometimes confusing to follow exactly which character you were reading from, because it's in third person omniscient, I guess, because you kind of know, maybe not, but it's like it's in third person, but you kind of hop around through like everybody's perspective. You're not only in one person's perspective, but it's not like a clear change all the time. You could be just like the next paragraph you're like supposed to be reading from, and it's like a different person's head and like point of view, and it's not like always a clean break, and it's not like labeled. It's not like in Six of Crows, like you start a chapter and the top of the chapter will say like Kaz and you're reading from Kaz's perspective. There's nothing like that, so it got confusing sometimes to be like, wait, who is this that I'm reading from right now? So that kind of made it a little difficult when reading, because I don't personally like to be confused. But overall, you know, it was fine, it was good, it was a little mystery, we solved it, there was murder, we know what happened. Do I remember much of what happened at this point? No, I don't really remember that much. I do remember that there were Russians involved, so there you go. Clearly this book really didn't stick with me, but you know, it was a 3.5 stars, so I don't think I expected or necessarily wanted it to. I think I will continue reading on in the series, mostly because there's like this like kind of idea of like, ooh, are they gonna get together between Lane and the detective? And I just want to read that happening, because it feels really unsatisfactory to like just be reading them not being together when it's like kind of clear that the book is setting up that they will. Also, Lane's an ex-spy, and I just like spy stuff. Spy things are fun. I was really reading a lot of mysteries now that I think of it, because after reading Death in a Darkening Mist, I actually read another mystery, and that was my reread of The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. And I did a reread of this because I read it now, I think back in January or February time was the first time I read it, and I gave it 4 stars, and I gave it 4 stars again. And I did this reread because I wanted to read the next book, and I kind of wanted a refresh on this one because I had a good time with it, and I like to read books that I like, so I like to reread books I like when the opportunity arises. And also because when I read this the first time, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of characters, it's kind of hard to keep track of, so I wanted to reread it to kind of wrap my head around all of the characters involved again before going into the second book. So I think that is like the downfall to this, is there are so many characters, and there's a lot that like have really like generic names, so it's hard to keep track of them. But overall, it's really fun, and it's not something you see all the time, right? You're reading from the perspective of octogenarians in a retirement village solving murders, and you don't get that every day, and it's fun. And again, the sarcastic kind of humor element is in here, and I love that in writing styles, especially mysteries. I read mysteries to just have like a quirky, fun, good time that kind of keeps you guessing, and this gives me that, and I like it. I just like really love this book. Like, the characters are so intriguing. I also like the complexity of the plot, and I'm seeing this in The Man Who Died Twice too, where there's kind of a lot of different tiny mysteries in a way going on that potentially could all be connected, but it's not clear if they're connected. So while you're trying to also guess exactly what happened with like this murder, you're also like, wait, but what about this? And is that related to the murder? And is that the same person? Or is that just a completely different side thing that's also a mystery? And I really love that complexity in it because you never know. It's not clear. It could just be something like on the side, just like, oh, and also this. And it's great. I just love that. I love that. It's so fun. So I had a really good time with this, and I'm having a really good time with the second book now. And then the final book that I read in September was Circe by Madeline Miller. I gave this 4.5 stars. I really loved this book. Despite it being kind of more medium slow paced, it did read pretty quickly for me. I found the middle dragged a little bit. The first half of this book, I would say, I read quite quickly. I was like devouring it. I find Madeline Miller's writing is like a really beautiful balance of like direct and lyrical. It's like still very clear to me, and I can still read relatively quickly and like comprehend exactly what she's saying, but it's just also beautiful wording, and it's so good. And like Circe is such a complex character in this book, and despite like you're following like an eternity because she's a goddess and it's a retelling, and like just the way that it focuses on the characters and what happens and like the relationships that she creates throughout it, it's just, I had a really good time. And I want to say I almost enjoyed it more than when I read The Song of Achilles, but I think that's partially because since reading The Song of Achilles, I've become much more familiar with general Greek mythology because I've been reading Percy Jackson, which I feel like is a really weird place to be getting all of my Greek mythology knowledge, but that's just the reality of it. So when you're reading it and some of the like stories and the gods and the characters that are coming up are names that you already know and you know kind of the context of it, it makes it easier to understand for sure. And I think that made me like the book more than when I read Song of Achilles and I didn't have that kind of base knowledge. I don't think you need to know about Greek mythology to enjoy the book, but I do think knowing about Greek mythology will help you enjoy the book more. That's just my thoughts on that. So that was all of the books I read in September. Here's a cute little, but like add the digital one, like here, like just pop that in. But yeah, here's the books I read. Wow, yay, cute. So I had a really good September. I had a good time. October's gonna start. I have good vibes for October. I feel like October is gonna be another fun reading month. I'm gonna try and read more, kind of like really fall into fall and spooky vibes for reading in October, and I think that'll be fun to do. So there we go. I hope that this was informative. I hope maybe you found a next read for you or something to add to your TBR. I feel like a lot of these books are quite popular and you also have probably read them, and if you have, let me know about it below and your thoughts. If you happen to like this video, make sure to give it a like, and if you happen to like me, consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. And with that, I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Bye-bye.